In a galaxy far, far away. Nope. Copyrighted.
We're going to get sued.
It's Get Geekish. I'm Derek. We got Bino over there.
Yo.
And we're coming at you to do what we normally do. Talk some geeky stuff at you the best that we can.
Yeah. You know? I mean, we've done some nostalgia. We've done some pop culture. We've done some music. And now we're going to talk one of the probably most debated topics overall in the last few decades of Star Wars.
Yeah, it is definitely... it's divided the internet numerous times. I mean, for a while they had movies coming out every Christmas, so it was like the Christmas holiday to do, and then all of a sudden you go to your family the next day and it's like, did you see that? Yeah, it was awesome. No, it was garbage. You know, that whole debate thing. So the reason we bring this up is because George Lucas's ex-wife, Marcia Lucas, right? Yeah. Who was the former editor, right?
Yeah, she was the editor behind the original Star Wars trilogy.
Mm-hmm. She has spoken out because of a thing. She did a foreword for it. And she said, and I quote, this is a foreword where she slams Kathleen Kennedy, who's the Lucasfilm president now, and Force director J.J. Abrams, arguing they don't have a clue about Star Wars, and then criticizing the decision to, spoiler alert, kill off Han Solo, just in case you hadn't seen it, and Luke Skywalker. She says they don't get it, and J.J. Abrams is writing these stories. When I saw the movie where they kill Han Solo, I was furious. Absolutely, positively, there was no rhyme or reason to it. I thought, you don't get the Jedi story. You don't get the magic of Star Wars. You're getting rid of Han Solo? And then at the end of the last one, they have Luke disintegrate. They killed Han Solo, they killed Luke Skywalker, and they don't have Princess Leia anymore, and they're spitting out movies every year. Now, with that quote, I can understand where she's coming from. You know, with the spitting out movies every year type of thing, they at least are kind of, on some of the movies with Rogue One and Solo, even though that wasn't great, trying to do something a little bit different. And I could appreciate that. Now, with the new trilogy, we've had discussions about this, right? Mm-hmm. We've had it with our friends. We've had it with our friend Maddie, who's joined us on this podcast many a times, as he's an avid Star Wars fan. And during the second one, I remember leaving the theater. What is it? That The Last Jedi? Leaving the theater with him and feeling deflated. And I asked him, I was like, so what'd you think? Because, I mean, that movie to me was just a long space chase with really nothing to add. It had a couple cool sequences, but overall, and I feel like The Force Awakens was just Abrams playing it safe, trying to adhere to nerd culture, rather than they having this universe that they can expand on.
See, and I get torn on this because I see a lot of these arguments, and there's a lot of points where, okay, yeah, I can see that. But short of making any enemies here, I still thoroughly enjoy most of the new Star Wars franchises. They have their issues, they have their problems, but
well, I mean,
if we're gonna compare apples to oranges here and apples to apples, let's go look at the original Star Wars movies.
Mm-hmm.
And we all love them. They're amazing movies. There's a lot of garbage parts in those, too, that we all just accepted and rolled with.
Well, I mean, a lot of people hate Return of the Jedi because of the Ewoks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they thought that was just a gimmicky thing. You know, she goes on to say, and this part, maybe, like, I'll agree with part of it, but not all of it, because she says, because she goes on, and they think it's important to appeal to a woman audience. I think that's important, but whatever. So she says, so now their main character is a female who's supposed to have Jedi powers, but we don't know how she got Jedi powers or who she is. It sucks. The storylines are terrible. Terrible, just awful. I think it's important to have the women characters because I think that expands it. Because, I mean, you get a hint of that in the original trilogy, right? That Leia is the other Jedi, but they never really expand on it because it was the 70s and the 80s. So I like this. I kind of agree with the no storyline aspect. It's just kind of like thrown, and they didn't really develop Rey until like the very last movie, which I wanted that movie to be so much better than it was. Like, I'll still watch it, but the whole, again, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, 3, 2, 1, the whole Palpatine thing was just shoehorned in. I feel like that was just forced in to just be a callback. That's me. But I think it's important to have the female characters because, I mean, they had that opportunity with the original trilogy, and they kind of just, oh, look, she's in love with this scruffy looking nerf herder now. And
But I feel like the whole inner argument for that part being that she's upset because there's no backstory. The original ones, they skipped the first 3 movies and just jump right. Hey, here's this little farm boy that's got the Force.
That's what I'm saying. I'm fine with the skipping the backstory. It's just that they didn't develop Rey until 2 movies later. You know, it took 3 minutes for them to go ahead and develop Rey, and they could have done a lot better because, I mean, at least they developed Luke somewhat in the first movie by, you know, having Obi-Wan spew exposition all over him, saying, "Oh, your father fought in the Clone Wars," blah blah blah. And she's not done yet, so she keeps going on. And she was talking about the prequel that you just brought up that went back to develop Darth Vader, saying, "I remember going out to the parking lot, sitting in my car and crying. I cried because I didn't think it was very good and thought George had such a rich vein to mine, a rich palette to tell stories with. There were things I didn't like about casting and things I didn't like about the story and things I didn't like. It was a lot of eye candy CG," which we know. The prequel was very trashed.
Which one are you talking about right now?
She was talking about Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace. Oh yeah.
They
were letdowns to me. They were over CG'd garbage when they came out to me. I was just finished high school when they came out, and I liked them, but it was like, okay, this is a little hokey and cheesy. I actually like them better now. We actually just watched them a few months ago. Watched the Phantom, the episodes 1, 2, and 3, and they were way better than I remember. There were still parts that I remember disliking. I hated the chemistry between Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman. Hated Jar Jar Binks, a few things they did with it, but the storylines themselves, I think I paid more attention and I liked more than I liked them when I first saw it 10 or 20 years ago.
100%.
There's still some issues.
I remember, being a kid watching them because the anticipation was there, and like I think I forced myself to like them, and then I watched them again in like my early 20s. I was like, no, and then I rewatched them like you like a couple months ago, and I was like, okay, the first one's still just god awful cheesy, and they developed the characters more in the second one and the third one. But the acting is still rigid in some places. But again, it's like it's like, okay, I appreciate it a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's going to happen with these later, the later series.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They're just not cultural phenomenons. Like, they're continuations. Mm-hmm. And she goes in that same argument too. If they killed off this character and this character, well, what exactly does she expect? These actors have been 30 or 40 years later.
Right. So my argument on that one too is, she knows because she worked on the original trilogy. Han Solo tried to die after Empire Strikes Back. He tried to have his character killed off. He was done playing him then, right? Mm-hmm. That's why it was the whole frozen carbonite thing. They're like, okay, but then they convinced him to come back, and that's why he was in Return of the Jedi. We all know that story. He was like done with Han Solo there. So, and you've seen interviews with him where there are people bring up, they're like, oh, Han shot first, Greedo shot first, and he's like, I don't give it. It's like he came back for a quick grab of money, and I think I saw in an interview like he only agreed to do it if they could kill his character off. So that one makes sense. Luke dying off kind of makes sense because, again, he's old and it's passing the torch to a new generation. So I can play both sides here. Like, I understand that aspect. I can also understand them. I mean, the first movie was basically just an homage, right? It was kind of a retelling of New Hope. Last Jedi was done by a totally different Jedi because Abrams was like, no, I don't want to do it anymore. So he, Rain, or whatever his name is, Rain Johnson, came in and put together a story. And that one is, I don't know. Like, again, it had some really cool aspects of it. That end scene was just amazing. But the whole space chase and casino thing was like unneeded, and it didn't really do anything. And the fact that the third one, Rise of Skywalker, kind of just skips over everything that happened in the second movie is just that's where you kind of lose your storytelling. And then they shoehorn in, that's apparently my word for the night, is they shoehorn in Rey's story to go, oh yeah, remember how we said that she was this nobody, dun dun dun, who was just left on this planet? Well, now she's Palpatine's granddaughter. And they never really kind of explained that. They were just like, you're going to accept it. Yeah. Call back. And it's one of those ones like, again, I'll watch it. I might not enjoy it, but I didn't buy it because it's on Disney Plus. So thanks Disney Plus for that.
and I feel like anyone that makes the Star Wars movies is already in an uphill battle because
100%.
How big the fan base is and how big the storylines are exist. I mean, you go into the books and things like that. There's literally thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of canon storyline and backstory that's all weaved together. So there's no way anybody can come up with a new story and do it quote unquote right for everybody.
Well, it's good that you mentioned that, because I mean, when Disney took over, they bought it from George Lucas for that nice pretty penny. A lot of the canon stuff became non-canon. It somehow they went in, they're like, nope, this isn't real. This isn't the nope. And they just reversed a whole lot, like a lot of people's work. They're like, wait, guys, I developed a whole, So the House of Mouse came over, took over, and they've done some interesting things, though. I will give them that. We had, like I said, Rogue One, which was a fantastic
Rogue One was
telling
awesome.
Of what happened in between. And they were able to make it their own movie without relying on characters we already know. Right? Mm-hmm. They took a story we knew that we heard in passing in between movies, and they made it their own. And yes, Darth Vader did show up, but it's the whole thing of like, they still kind of took this whole thing. You're like, okay, that's pretty cool.
I feel like that was some writer's way of being like, I am going to answer why the Death Star had one weak spot. I'm going to make an entire movie to explain why that's actually a real thing.
Right? And then you have phone call. And then you have, things like Clone Wars, which is development. It was developed after, obviously the prequels, which I have not followed any of that. I feel bad, but there's just so much of it. And then it went away.
Clone Wars and Rebels and Bad Batch are all on my list that I haven't got around to watching yet.
Right. And Clone Wars ended on like a cliffhanger, and they just recently brought it back for people. And it was one of those ones when I went and saw Solo, when they brought back Darth Maul, I was like, wait, I thought he died. And I had to Google why he was alive, and apparently Clone Wars, the animated series, tells why he's alive with cybernetic legs. I was like, oh, okay.
I have one beef, which I have a very probably unpopular opinion with. All right, Darth Maul in general. He seems to be like the bright spot to most people. Like, well, it had Darth Maul. Those are the best thing about those movies. He was the only good thing about it. He was the best villain they came up with all those. Darth Maul said like 7 words in the entire trilogy.
The coolest thing, here's the thing, he died in the first movie.
Uh-huh.
Well, apparently not, but he got chopped in half the first movie. He was in it, probably for like a total of maybe like 15 minutes. Didn't say a whole lot, right? Went out, well, sure, he killed Liam Neeson. That's not hard to do. Wolves can do that. But you have, then he went out to Ewan McGregor. The coolest thing about that, I think, the reason I bring up Darth Maul is just because of you have the Duel of the Fates, that that awesome soundtrack that went with it.
Yeah, the soundtrack good. That's good.
Right. But I mean, I agree with you. Here's Star Wars has a bad habit of coming up with cool villains and then killing them way too quickly. Or like chumps. You look at Darth Maul, right? You look at Boba Fett.
I feel like if they would have done a movie that actually developed Darth Maul's character, he could have been awesome. But as it stands right now, he was just a bunch of face paint with not one, but two lightsabers.
If they did a movie about the Sith, that'd be great. If they could explain all that. Because, I mean, like, you have a whole bunch of Sith. They mentioned some of them passing. The animated series has touched on them. Boba Fett went out like a chump in Return of the Jedi, but he's back, and I'm excited to see what they're going to do with the Book of Boba Fett. Mm-hmm. So thank you, House of Mouse, for that. General Grievous was an awesome villain, but also went out like a chump.
I'm not sure how an asthmatic robot was a great villain, but
dude, he had 4 lightsabers and he wasn't a Jedi. I mean, maybe that's why he went out like a chump. But I mean, like,
that was part of my beef with those movies for it. Darth Maul, ooh, it's a big, great villain because he's got 2 lightsabers. Kill him because this one's got 4 lightsabers. Like there's more to villains than how many lightsabers they can hold.
Well, I mean, you look at the new trilogy. You have Captain Phasma, right?
Mm-hmm.
Giant silver stormtrooper. She was awesome.
Yeah, again, with all the marketing they had for her, and then she's in the movie, she says like 4 lines and then gets killed. You're like, what on earth is this for?
Oh man, I was expecting so much more. I was like, that dinky little fight with Finn in the second movie. I was like, dude, come on.
Mm-hmm.
But they have a bad habit, but I am excited because I think, now that the Skywalker anthology or whatever they call it is wrapped up, they're going to start focusing on more side stories. We already have The Bad Batch, which is a series. You have Mandalorian, which has had 2 seasons now of the series, which is fantastic. Just won some Emmys. The second series set up the third series, as well as the Book of Boba Fett, which I am really excited about because then we can get some backstory and find out how he survived the Sarlacc pit, even though I know there's books on there, but I don't even know if they're canon anymore, so I'm not going to even mention it. And see where why he's sitting on Jabba's throne and all that jazz. So I'm excited to see that and see, the Obi-Wan series just got done wrapping. Actually, they just put out an article like yesterday?
Yeah, real recently.
So I'm excited to see that, and Ewan McGregor's really happy about it. So I don't know.
I'm excited for this story. I love the Star Wars universe, and like I said, as much as I hate the killing off characters sometimes, it's also nice because it keeps you on your toes, because with the exception of a few of the main characters, you never really know. With some series, you see characters like, okay, they're going to be here this entire time. Mm-hmm. But with the way they're doing Star Wars now, that any one of those characters could get blown to bits any episode that's coming up. You're like, I don't know if I can get too attached to this one. Not sure they're going to be around. Right.
I guess like Poe was supposed to die in Force Awakens, but they ended up making his character stay longer, and all these different things. And like, that's one thing that I can say Star Trek does great with their like spinoffs is they're good at developing a different thing with the same material. Mm-hmm. Because you had Star Trek Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, all that. And they might not always be great, but they're using that same thing to kind of branch out to tell different stories. And I wish that, hopefully now that the Skywalker thing is wrapped up, hopefully that the other movie people will start going, okay, like you said, there's plenty of material out there.
What I just wish is that they go through and they've got some people that are doing it, but I'm sure with the marketing gurus that are at Disney, they have some people that are focused a little too much on like the focus group feedback on what characters do well and don't do well, which don't necessarily add to the story at all. Which they decided that Poe is everybody loves Poe. We got to keep Poe around. Okay, so if there's a lot of people in a certain demographic that think Poe's adorable, that doesn't mean the story's going to be better if he stays along. Maybe it's better off if he goes out in a blaze of glory for it. Like, somebody's got to find that line of marketability versus storyline versus sentiment are 3 completely different things to look at, and you can't just pigeonhole into one basket. Oh, well, kids will love this. We'll have Jar Jar Binks. Like, well,
yeah, rewatching the prequels and seeing, because after the first one, in Clone Wars or Attack of the Clones, whatever it was, and then the Revenge of the Sith, how Jar Jar Binks became less and less in those movies. I was like, oh, they kind of get it. But I am going to say this to everybody: if you don't like a character in a movie, not just Star Wars, shut up. Just don't go after the actor, because the guy that played Jar Jar Binks got bullied so hard that he went into depression and everything like that. The poor kid from Colorado that played young Anakin in Phantom Menace got bullied so hard that he quit acting, right? Mm-hmm. Hayden Christensen took like some time off because he got bullied so hard. Rose from The Last Jedi.
Yeah, she got a whole bunch of threats against her too, right?
Yeah, she got a whole bunch of threats because social media is different now. So she got a whole bunch of threats and deleted her social media for a little bit. People went after Finn, and I'm just like, stop.
You got to keep it on the belt. Like we always try to talk about the positivity of things. You can complain about things once in a while. When you complain about something like that somebody else made, complain about the part that you don't like, the character that you didn't like. Don't complain about the actor that did it, because the actor was just doing their best at it. I absolutely despise the chemistry between Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen. Do I hate either of them or wish they were ill will in them? No, they were probably doing exactly what they were told to do.
I was going to say that's more of a writing and a directing, and you can see it in parts of the prequels where George Lucas was 100% just doing a cash grab, because right before those came out is when he did like the remasters of the original trilogy where he put all the CG garbage back into them. It was either right before that or right after.
How this whole thing started together with his ex-wife talking about this, I want to know where she stands on those. Because his re-releases with that CGI garbage of the original ones, I think that is the most despicable thing that's happened to the Star Wars franchise of any of the things that were there.
If he were to do it now, I mean, it's still, I want the original, how they were. Though there is an original of New Hope out there, like an original edit before it was edited, and it's god awful. I watched a little bit of it. It's on the internet somewhere. I don't know where, but like you watch a little bit, oh god. So the editing in that saved that movie. But if he decides, or if House of Mouse decides not to, re-release the original Star Wars trilogy as it was released, and they want to release it again with the CGI garbage in it, CGI's advanced enough now. Fix it, please. Because it is so out of place when you're watching it. You're just like...
It's like a sore thumb because it's this weird random scene with all of a sudden the graphics are twice as good as everything else in the movie. Okay.
Like Bob Hoskins in Toontown is more believable for real life than the CGI that's in the Star Wars the re-releases, dude. Like, it's just... It's awful. But I mean...
That was one thing that did bother me when I was younger, when the prequel trilogy came out, and you're thinking, okay, this happened before the original Star Wars. We wrap my head around that. How is everything higher tech?
Well, because the Empire took over and people got poor, right?
But everything, even the Empire stuff, they had better ships, better lasers, better armor, better transports, better everything in the prequel movies than they did in the actual Star Wars. It always hurt my brain a little bit because you're like...
One thing that also hurts my brain too is when you watch like Rogue One, right? You watch that ending hallway scene with Darth Vader and he's just like, you're like, oh, this is awesome. And then right after that, if you're watching them, you watch New Hope right after that, and the lightsaber battles are, you're like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, because honestly, the end of Rogue One was the first time you ever thought, wow, Darth Vader is a bad mofo.
Right? And then but like, again, if you're watching them in order, you go to that and then go to Rogue One and you're like, why is this so slow? Come on, he's an old man.
But he's got the Force.
Oh man, if you ever have time, Google like stories about the original trilogy and the prequels, because what's his name that played the original Obi-Wan, Sir Alan something.
Yeah,
he didn't believe in the series at all. He thought it was all just a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo, and just kind of went with it and was like, yeah, sure, this isn't going to go anywhere. So if he could see it now. But there's always like fun little stories like that and everything. But I don't know. Again, the new trilogy, the whole thing that brought this up is because George Lucas' ex-wife is like, nah, I hate them. I get where she's coming from. I don't necessarily like them. They're not my favorites. I'll watch them, still be entertained. And another thing that I want to reiterate is, especially with the new Star Wars stuff coming out, the new series and new movies, who knows when. We just said this, I know, I'm bringing it up again. If you don't like the actor, like the character, don't take it out on the actor, please. Like, I know, it's stupid, but just don't.
And you can still like a fandom or like a series and still dislike part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can like Star Wars and still say you hate one of the movies. Just like you can say you like the Smurfs, but think Grumpy Smurf's a pile of crap. Like,
well, I was gonna say a lot of people don't like Deep Space Nine, right? Is that the one that people don't like? Of Star Trek?
Well, some people, yes, but if I know a few people, if I said that, they would start slapping me right now and saying Deep Space Nine is the best show ever. So,
well, I mean, everybody holds the original's great, but everybody holds the Next Generation at that higher pedestal. but that's a whole different podcast. So.
Yeah, that's a different Star trilogy series.
Yeah, I was going to say, Star Wars went from a trilogy to becoming this whole conglomerate thing. I mean, it has its own theme park now, basically. They're going to keep expanding to it. And
so I think to take the time to just appreciate it. If you love Star Wars or you hate Star Wars, you've obviously seen it. If you don't know much about it, it's fun to dive into the world because there's just so much you can go. There's something for somebody of any age. There's cartoons, there's short TV shows, there's long TV shows, there's short series, there's long series, there's movies, there's theme parks, there's books, there's graphic novels.
Video games.
I mean, you can just immerse yourself in this world, and if you just let yourself dive into it, it can be fun.
Well, and I'm excited too because I know. Do you remember the Star Wars? What was it? The Lego Christmas special last year or 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
How fun that was! They're doing another one, and I'm so excited about it.
That was fun because being able to go back and make fun of the original one, but still, have some homage
it's Lego
to it.
too, so you're like, "Hey, this is fun!" And I think it's a Halloween one this year or something. I don't know. I'm excited for it though. But I mean, that's the thing is like, there's so much that you can work with this universe that I'm excited to see where they're going to go, and they don't necessarily need to keep rehashing the old storyline because everybody's now adverse to look at The Mandalorian, how big of a hit that was. Yeah, they had some tie-ins to here and there to different parts, but you didn't have to go in knowing this, and this, you know? And that's what the internet's for, too. If you want answers, Google it.
Yeah. And you can find something for everybody. If you don't want strong female characters, okay, don't watch the new series. You don't like bad CGI, don't like the prequel series. You don't like... I don't know what other kind of things you go with. You don't like animation, don't watch the animated series. If you don't like something, just don't watch it and don't get upset if everybody else likes it.
Right? Wasn't that the whole thing about the Clone Wars series? At first was like people couldn't stand the computer...
Yeah, the CGI for it because
the CGI animation on it.
And no offense to anybody out there, but let's be honest, a lot of the original diehard Star Wars fans might be a little sensitive about certain parts of Star Wars. I'm just saying.
Ooh.
And
some of the disturbance in the Force.
Some of them make very valid points, but like we just talked about before, different strokes, different folks. Things are not made for everybody all the time. It works out, but if you've spent many hours enjoying Star Wars, let's be thankful that we got to enjoy Star Wars.
True.
So there's an awful lot of hate to be going on to spout how many blog posts and Facebook posts of how horrible something is when you've literally watched it 4 dozen times. Can it be that bad if you keep watching it and keep talking about it and keep watching it and keep talking about it?
Let's just have a friendly debate about it. I mean, because that's the thing is like, like you said, Wolverine Origins on that one, it's not great. It's not a good movie. Mm-hmm. You'll watch it if it's on TV. Mm-hmm. It's not like you're like so angry you throw your remote at the TV. It's like, I'll watch it. And that's the same thing with Star Wars.
Well, look at us, The Last Jedi. When we went out there, you had a very different take of The Last Jedi than I did. We're still friends.
What? Again, it's like certain aspects. That's the whole thing is like, I could go out and go, God, I hated that movie. That movie was awful. Or there were certain aspects of that movie that I did not like, but there's also certain things that were just amazing.
Yeah.
And that's that,
Pros and cons.
Just like life.
Which it sounds like that the ex-wife of George Lucas isn't seeing any of those. She's just upset and mad that it's not exactly the way she thought it was going to be. But I bet she was the one that wanted those CGI edits in there.
Well, that's the thing too. Is like I could see that. I could see something that you work so hard on kind of turned on its head. But at the same time, it's like.
Do you feel sorry for somebody like that? You hear that story of somebody had their creation torn apart and ruined by Hollywood. Welcome to almost every writer in history.
Right. Have you watched The Hunger Games? I mean, any book to movie, really. Anyway, that's another podcast. So,
coming to a stereo near you soon. But what do you think? What's your favorite Star Wars property? We're going to keep it on the positive side. So let us know what your favorite one is in the comments. At GetGeekish. You can be as specific as you want. But
what's yours before we go?
My favorite property. Well, I have a soft spot with the originals, but I honestly, Rogue One is, every time I watch it, I still get like chills in my spine. Like, it's like, oh, it's such a good movie.
Right?
And
so I agree.
good.
Rogue One is so good. I'm also going to make a lot of people mad. I still have a really soft spot for Return of the Jedi. I love me some Ewoks. I'll say it. They're fun. They're fun. It was a nice little
Ewoks? How could you like Ewoks? Well, let us know. May the Force be with you, and we will talk at you next week.
Thanks for listening. We appreciate it very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. And speaking of more podcasts, we got plenty of them. Check the links.